Last year, this window cleaning business made $260,000. 2 years ago, I was CFO of an educational services company.
That is a window cleaning business, not the fancy tech startup, not real estate, windows. Today, I'm finding out exactly how a business like this makes money, what it actually costs to get into, and whether the numbers hold up when you read the fine print. Because I've read over 1,000 of these disclosure documents, and the gap between what a brand advertises and what owners actually make is usually the whole story. All right, so take me back. What were you doing before you got into the window cleaning business?
Most recently, I was actually executive director of a group called CLT Impact Investors. I took up the role as executive director there, started to due diligence on some opportunities to see, where we could put the money.
Did you raise your hand for that? So CFO of what sounds like a private equity type of environment and group to, hey, Bryant, we're going to put you in as an operator of a window cleaning business. Did you look at a bunch of different things, or was this was it?
No, I looked at a bunch of different things. Originally, I was looking at the more sexy stuff, the stuff that's a little more textbook, trying to find, tech, maybe a good e-commerce win or...
Any food?
Didn't look at food. Stayed away from food. But the more I would kind of pitch those types of businesses, the guys are kind of like, shrugs, okay. The exercise of going back and forth with them really helped me kind of shred apart, like, hey man, let's look for businesses that actually cash flow and have cash flow potential, because a lot of the ones we had looked at, quite frankly, they hadn't built themselves up. I was literally on a call, a bit frustrated, and I was like, well, what do you like? And one of them who's, again, done this massive consolidation was just like, I like pest control. And I was like, pest control? And that sort of opened the door. That's when I started to look at home services businesses. And I looked through so many deals, and these were more acquisitions, not franchises at the time, 600,000, 750,000 SDE. I was like, oh man, so okay, there's an opportunity here.
For those listening, SDE is seller discretionary earnings.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know it.
All right, so you're working with this group and you guys start to get the idea to look at home services, starting with pest control. How did you land on window cleaning?
Yeah, no, I think one of the biggest challenges for me was, again, I've been more white collar my whole career. HVAC was always a really hot conversation, but it's very difficult to find labor for HVAC, and it's at a much more mature stage in its cycle. So, you're paying higher multiples. 9 times out of 10, you'll probably overpay for HVAC in this, environment, especially when I was looking. Plumbing, same thing, labor constraints, like the ability to find licensed plumbers. I don't know anything about plumbing. It just felt a little out of reach for me. I looked for one that had the recurring potential as well as something that I could actually learn in the worst case scenario. When I came across window cleaning, I was like, okay, I wasn't as familiar with it as an industry. The more I looked at the actual market for it, and being in a city like Charlotte, which is, a very clean city, there's a lot of priority placed on, the appearance and the upkeep of their homes and buildings as well. And so it's like, man, this looks like a good opportunity. And so when I looked at the unit economics of it all, it made a lot of sense to me.
And so you said recurring revenue is important. How much of your business today in Pinks is recurring versus one-off?
Yeah, I would say currently our revenue is about 50% recurring. We want to get that higher, quite frankly. We want to get it closer to that 75, 80% range, but we're at 50 right now.
And then when you guys set out to do this, did you end up buying an existing one, or was it territory that you developed? And how much did it cost all in to get this thing going?
This, I started from zero. In fact, my launch was the first launch in North Carolina for Pinks. So it was definitely a roll of the dice on a young franchisor. There was no other company or no other brand that I would have started from scratch with. I really believed in the ethos. I loved the approach. It just aligned with a lot of the things that I wanted to achieve in the first place. That question of how much did it cost to get started, I really think it depends on what you mean by get started. I would say to buy the actual territory itself, you're looking at about $60,000. When it comes to ramp up, investing in the van, equipment, everything you need, you'll get closer into that 150 to 170K lane. So that is not working capital.
What is working capital for those that don't know?
Yeah, working capital is essentially the funding you use to fund the operations of your business. It's very critical in an industry like this, especially if you build commercial clientele. In the event that you complete a job, you're paying for your labor. sometimes much faster than you get your revenue in. And so you need some money to float that in-between phase and to be able to actually make good decisions in between them. You may need to boost marketing. You may need to adjust to the marketplace. And without that kind of runway of working capital, you can find yourself in a really hard position.
I want to ask one follow-up question to that. So in a franchise disclosure document, the FDD, they typically show 3 months of working capital is what you need. But the reality is most business owner knows you want more than 3 months. So how many months did you have? How many months do you wish you had?
Yeah, I would say it definitely varies based on the business. I would say if you're in a franchise starting from zero and you're doing, something like Pink's, there isn't necessarily a stronghold in your particular market. I would say 18 months of legitimate runway.
Okay.
Hopefully that is not the case. 18 is a lot more realistic. You're gonna need way more than 6. You're gonna need way more than 8, especially when you're dealing with businesses that have seasonality.
Brian brings up a good point. Most businesses go through this J curve where the first few months are very hard because you're building up a customer base, you're getting used to the business. And so when he says 18 months of runway, what he's talking about is if your monthly costs all in are 10K for rent, labor, etc., you need 10 times 18 months to get through that tough period, which would be 180 grand in this case.
I wish I would have raised more too to answer that question.
You were into this business for real money before you even signed any customers. Take us back to that moment you signed. What were you most scared of, before that moment?
It was a bit immature of me, but I wasn't much afraid at all. I should have been a little more afraid, quite frankly. But I think the biggest thing that just, made me kind of really sweat a little bit was just that, stepping into that number one seat where this all now depends on you. You have investors, you have, now you'll have staff, you have these people who are looking to you to not only make the right decision as far as how you launch or manage the business, but to really grow it and be successful. And I think that was a test that I had not had in my career yet. So I think that naturally just kind of, created some butterflies of like, hey man, here's the jump, here it is. And so
you went for it.
Went for it.
All right, now I want to get into some of the numbers. So when you visit the average job site, how much revenue are you generating?
About $700.
All right, $700. And when you quote somebody, what's the average close rate?
48%.
All right, 48%. That didn't really fly away. All right, so if you're closing almost half of your quotes, how many jobs per week do you need to do to get to your revenue from last year?
Last year, we did right at about $260,000 with an average ticket that flirted with $700. So again, 52 weeks in a year, you're looking at about, 7 jobs a week. But of course, you have some really big ones and some really small ones that kind of can make that number look a bit different week to week.
You gotta get the right blend of commercial and residential.
100%.
All right, so that's your math. Let's talk about what the math is in the brand's franchise disclosure document. All right, so their disclosure document breaks franchisees into thirds. The top third averaged $412,000 in gross revenue, the middle third $284,000, and the bottom third $148,000. The average job size runs $339 at the bottom, $479 in the middle, and $737 at the top. And close rate goes from 58% to 68%. All right, so based on your numbers and the numbers in the FDD, that puts you right about at the upper part of the middle tier, and you're less than 2 years in.
Yeah.
Let me step out quick and tell you why I think this category is genuinely interesting, because it's immediately not that obvious. There's no dining room, there's no prime corner with parking, no build out. The equipment that you have all fits in this van behind me, and your customer never sees an office because there isn't one. You strip out real estate and construction, which are the 2 most expensive parts of any retail build out, and what's left is a much simpler machine. The work itself is recurring. Windows need washed all year round, and they get dirty over and over and over again. And it's a job everybody needs and almost nobody wants to do themselves. Nobody is posting about owning a window cleaning company either. That's exactly why there's room in it. All right, so we did some math on how many jobs you need to do each week to hit the same revenue you did last year. Now let's talk about the other side of the coin. What does a slow month look like, and how do you get through it?
Yeah, slow months, devastating. Especially when you're new. Like a slow month everybody warns you about it. They say you can anticipate, especially during these certain, windows in the sales cycle, you can expect for demand to just lessen. But when you experience it, it's another beast. You're in February and you're in Charlotte, and it happened to be literally the coldest February we've had in over a decade. Slinging water on glass in freezing temperatures just isn't a smart thing to do. You can't work and demand's lower. So even if you had the demand, unless you're just cleaning a bunch of interiors, there's really no way for you to work weeks on end. And that goes back to kind of our working capital conversation. Like those time periods you have to be prepared for, because you will have slow months in this. That's just, the dips are real, they exist. And if you have a really good team, you got to figure out, well, how do you keep them busy? How do you at least keep a core group, whereas you're not having to do a full rehire when it picks back up again, but figuring out, hey, you got these people on your team that they need to pay rent, they need to survive. What can they do to help you push forward and, have an even better peak this year?
So here's the part that people miss. There's also a royalty that has to come out of gross revenue. And for Pinks, that's 7% or $346 per territory per week, whichever's greater.
And don't forget the 2% brand fund that also comes out every week.
On a $284,000 a year business, that's a 7% royalty coming right off the top, or about $20,000 directly to Pinks. This covers the system, the leads they generate, and all the branding that you get. What we're here today to figure out is that worth it? All right, so there's two things in the Pinks FDD that I want to talk about, because they're atypical. They're not normally in an FDD. And the first one is exclusivity. So a lot of the times brands, when you buy into a territory, you're protected. But with Pinks, any other Pinks franchisee can come in, can service customers in your zip codes, etc. Have you run into this at all? Has it been a problem, or is this a non-issue?
Yeah, I think it's not a huge issue. I think there's a pretty good culture amongst, at least my neighboring franchisees. But there are those scenarios where if you launch in a market before someone else, where you may get quite a bit more traction in their zip code because they're just not there. So those leads come to you, and then once they're there, you have customers in their zip code, which, can be problematic. It may not feel the best for whoever just bought that territory. But quite frankly, I don't have a huge issue with it. I think them preventing marketing is huge. So you can't just go out and generate leads in other territories, which that would be pretty difficult to try to live through. So that restriction is helpful.
All right, so break down your book for me. Like what percentage of the business is residential houses and what percent is commercial accounts?
Yeah, so residential is the majority of our book right now. We're about 70% residential, 30% commercial as far as quantity of jobs.
And do they charge, do you charge a way different amount per? Is it one higher ticket than the other?
Oh yeah, for sure. Commercial is much higher ticket on average than residential. We do have some retail storefronts that are kind of on the lower end of the spectrum, probably the lowest point in pricing, but a lot of our commercial gigs are really big.
All right, so it sounds like residential is the volume, right? 70% of your business, but commercial accounts have a much higher ticket, so it gives you that strong foundation, which I think that's something as a business owner you got to think about. There's probably a reason why commercial is so valuable, and I think you're probably about to tell me why.
Yeah, no, I say commercial gives quite a bit of stability. Homeowners tend to, even the recurring homeowners tend to change schedule a bit more. Commercial is just a lot stickier, especially in those slower periods when we hit those winter months. Commercial is really what can get you through that time period, because homeowners, they just aren't thinking about their windows in January.
Well, to a business too, it's just another line item versus someone at home. They might be looking at every expense, every bill. They want to cut costs. And like you said, in the winter, water freezes and they're like, I'm just not going to do it. I can wait a few months. It's not as big of a deal to them versus some of these commercial accounts. It's kind of set it and forget it. And you got that guaranteed revenue to keep your team, paid and revenue coming in during those slower times.
Yeah, no, that's correct.
All right, now I want to ask you about some of the things that nobody talks about in these videos. And that's, what's a moment that this just almost didn't work?
Oh man, couple moments. But I would say winter is the teller of all in this business. Being able to, get past your own optimism and really look at your numbers and the reality of kind of what you're up against. Again, if you don't raise or if you don't have, or haven't capitalized the right way from a standpoint of your working capital, then you could really, look at a reset button there if you don't, just kind of figure out a way to strategically move through such a tough time.
But winter's the big kicker. Let's talk about that one first. So what was the drop actually like? Did you lose half of your sales, 80% of your sales? How do you weather that storm? How do you, navigate through it all?
Yeah, I think the second winter was a lot easier because of time and market. One thing you can't cheat with this is time and market. Like, it just kind of compounds. That very first winter, I launched in October, which is also a really important thing to note. Be mindful of when you launch. Please be mindful of when you launch. If you're buying a franchise and you decide to launch, you probably want to launch closer to wherever the demand cycle is highest, which in the fall is a good demand cycle for this business. So when I launched in October, we had a great first month. I mean, the first month, I didn't expect to make much of anything. I think we did 13,000. I said, oh, nobody knows who we are. And that was like all residential. And so I was like, oh man, we're about to crush it. It's October. This isn't even spring. And then November came back and it was at that level again. And then after Christmas, I mean, it hit hard. And then you get into the other side of January, and retail experienced some exhaustion on the other side of Christmas as well. When January came, I think we did $1,000 maybe. So we dropped to virtually nothing in January with ads still pushing. I mean, we're going out, we're trying to generate business. It was just absolutely brutal.
This is where working capital comes in. And you said something too that I think a lot of people don't fully think about, and that's whether you have a slow season in the summer or the winter, the bills don't take vacation, right? Like, you've got your rent, you've got payroll, you've got insurance, you've got taxes. And in this case with Pinks, you've got that minimum royalty of $346 every week that's coming in. And so you got to weather that storm again. You have that working capital to help get you through it. You mentioned something before we started, talking today, and that was you also had a low period where you lost really key employees or key, individual. Walk us through that experience and how you navigated that and how you've kind of turned things around now and have a good stable base again.
Yeah, no, I would say I built a team and sort of reached this level of independence with the team I had where I could mostly work on the business. I could drive more relationships and, again, even work on that partnership with our sales director with Lowe's, which was a huge sort of win. My team and sort of that core team I had retained well over a year.
Wow.
You learn who people are when things, get tough. And actually, growth is what sort of broke kind of my first build out of team and just culture. And you just realize once you grow and there's more pressure and there's, these other things that press on people, and it just exposes more about who they are and their character. And it could put you in a spot where you got to make some tough decisions around, hey, is this person a fit for where we're going? And they may be questioning themselves, if it's a fit for them. And so when that happens, if you've already sort of built this independence, you may find yourself having to come back into working in the business. And I love the hands-off and this idea of a business that, doesn't require a lot of hands-on, but I think it's necessary to just go inside it every now and then so you know who is kind of running your ship, who is setting your standard and enforcing it, because you'll learn a lot about what you actually have. Even though your numbers may look one way, once, something happens that sort of reveals something about a personality, you realize how fragile it actually is. And that's what happened. You just realize, oh, yeah, we're getting good reviews. Yeah, we're getting revenue. But culturally, there are some things wrong, that taking care of the van and just some of the small things that matter as you compile more work. We got more work and it just broke. And I had to sort of hit the reset button and come in and clean windows and do whatever we had to do just to keep our customers happy, as well as sort of get a stable crew back in. So now we got a great group of guys, thankful for them, and we're kind of pushing forward and ready to kind of build the right way here. So.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. Most businesses are going to be about people. They're your strongest asset. They can also be the hardest part about operating. You lose a good person, you've got turnover. And there's also no shortcut, even if it's a franchise, right? Like you can't just buy it and expect to collect checks in the mail. You're gonna have to learn how to wash windows or flip burgers or whatever it is that you're doing. And no job should be below you as the owner, because you lead from the front. And it sounds like you've been learning this, navigating it, and have done a good job kind of rebuilding that team, even though you had this kind of rocky patch that I think a lot of people experience at some point when you're going to be an entrepreneur or a business owner.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
I want to show you something in this agreement because it connects directly to what he just said about Winter. Pink sets a minimum revenue requirement. Year 2, 300,000. Year 3 through 5, 400,000. Years 6 through 10, 500,000 per territory. Miss it, and they can reduce your territory, require paid additional training, or terminate the agreement entirely. Now hold that against their own numbers. The bottom third of franchisees averaged $148,930 in gross revenue. The requirement in years 3 through 5 is $400,000. So a meaningful chunk of owners are running at well under half the number their contract holds them to. That's not me trashing Pinks. Both of those numbers are in their own disclosure document, which they're legally required to hand you before you sign. Most brands don't publish anything close to this much. But if you're buying this, you need to know that floor exists, and you need to know what Winter does to that math. Go in with your eyes wide open. All right, so we just talked about like the two hardest moments of you becoming this business owner, this entrepreneur. If you had a friend call you up right now and said, Brian, should I do something like Pink's or another franchise? What would be your honest pitch for why they should? And then what would be your warning for them not doing it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's honestly a question that has really driven me to have more of those conversations and, advise friends and, just individuals who reach out and know a bit about my story. I wish some of those conversations I would have had, but I would say on the positive side of would I recommend it, I think it would really depend on the friend. Like I would be really honest about them and their expectations. I think I would recommend it to someone who is really willing to grind, willing to sort of develop the EQ of dealing with the highs and lows, and someone who has access to funds and knows how to really kind of make sure that they're capitalized the right way so that they can scale, meaningfully depending on what their goals are. I would say the biggest thing I would watch out for, I think there's a lot of content that sort of oversimplifies blue collar and oversimplifies some of, the boring business, especially in something like window cleaning. It's simple, but by no stretch of the imagination is it easy.
No.
It is incredibly difficult. You just realize like the core of what a business is, like those challenges you can't escape. So my warning is please do not underestimate it. Don't look at it as, hey, this is an easier route than doing something. No, it's a different route. And there are some benefits that, streamline things a bit for you, but by no stretch of the imagination is it easy.
Yeah. Do not get sold on passive businesses. I think there's no such thing. There's a few, but for the most part, you are in it. You got to learn it the first year especially. It can become passive over time, but you got to earn the right for it to become passive, not just sign an agreement, write a check, and say, hey, this is a incoming check every week.
100%.
I know it's hot out here. Last one for you. What has this whole experience as a franchisee, a business owner, actually changed for you?
Man, it is literally, I think, reshaped my DNA at this point. You go through things that only this experience can teach you. I think, being an operator, an owner-operator is an incredibly unique experience, and having a background, spending some time even on the investment side of things, and even as a number 2 in an operating company, this particular seat is incredibly difficult from a standpoint of what you have to manage emotionally. So I'm thankful for the experience all in all. You get to employ people, you get to really make a difference in your city, and it's tangible things. Like I'm doing something real is happening.
Well, like you said, you're just kind of in the beginning still. You're not even 2 years in.
Yeah.
We tell a lot of people that we work with, you're going to be in this for 5+ years and you're going to learn so much, and the knowledge is going to compound, the customer base is going to compound, and you just got to figure out what that right fit is for you. And to your point, once you find it, you get to make such a huge impact on the customers you serve, the people that you employ, but I think most importantly, you as an individual become a much more contributing member of society. You learn so much more. You learn all these skills that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And worst case scenario, you go back to doing the stuff that you were doing previously, much better equipped, more knowledgeable, and more ready to take calculated risk and build teams in a way that you weren't before.
Oh, 100%.
All right, so window cleaning is certainly not for everybody, but we learned a ton in this video. We talked about the actual numbers to buy one of these businesses, what the ongoing royalties and other fees are, and how much revenue and money you can actually make. Brian also shared with us the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how he weathered the awful winter seasonality that comes with the business of window cleaning. If you want to learn more about other franchises, the real data, the real numbers behind them, and what the lifestyle of doing it actually looks like, that's why we built Franzi. Go over to franzi.com, check it out, or subscribe and follow for more videos from Alex from Franzi.